Hey cats, it's Ed Endorphin Bud here. Today I get to try out a shoe that I've wanted to test for a long time, the Endorphin Elite from Saucony. Get to try it out firsthand, or foot I suppose. It certainly is one of the wildest looking shoes out there. It really is clog-like, but never judge a shoe by the upper. Thanks for joining me on the channel once again, people. Help us to grow and continue to amass those subscribers by clicking that button. Get us to 100,000 subs. Also give this video a thumbs up like, it really does help out to get us to more runners. Danke schön. So the Endorphin Elite finally in hand. This is a UK 11 or US 12. I have about 244 grams for my size. That's about 8.6 ounces. It's almost exactly the same as the Endorphin Pro 3. I'm finding this one true to size in terms of length, and that's what I'd recommend for you. People with a narrow foot will be happy to hear that Saucony haven't been overly generous with the upper materials this time round. Just more appropriate with their measurements, and it really does fit like a glove. I've got a midsole stack here of 42mm back there in the heel and approximately 35mm in the forefoot. Kind of odd with this one, you have to take into account the very exaggerated rocker here that you've got in the mid to forefoot area of the shoe, and there's quite a lot of foam that actually does cup up and around the foot here, so don't think it's some sort of skyscraper on foot. It really isn't. Well, I mean, it's well over 40mm, but hey, that's what you'd expect from a super shoe, right? Interesting that the cutout in this shoe is actually on the lateral side rather than the medial side. It's kind of like the reverse, really, of the Adios Pro 3. I've got a Sure A durometer softness reading here for this Power Run HG foam of about 25. I do think that Saucony have got some sort of like outer layer on it, but it is very soft. I'd say it's a little bit firmer though than what you found in the Endorphin Pro 3. I have found though over some miles it is beginning to flex and becoming a little bit softer and a little bit more compressive. I got about 11.5 centimeters in the widest point in the mid to forefoot and about 9.5 in the widest point in the heel. Very thin rubber here on the Endorphin Elite. It's probably only a millimeter or two. It's a servant scraping, that's for sure. I would expect some quick wear on the medial side of the foam here. It's completely exposed. You do have quite a longer strip here though on the lateral side. Okay, that's it for the stats, but the numbers are only part of the story. Let's get to the upper first. The big interesting thing here about the shoe is this wrap that you get on the medial and lateral sides that then also joins in underneath on the carbon plate. It really does help to lock the shoe round your foot. You feel kind of like a pilot, I suppose, in some sort of high-speed jet or something. You feel like Tom Cruise, like running really fast. The laces are a little bit stretchy. They allow you to really cinch them down, though I guess the stretchiness will allow a little bit when your feet start to swell up during those longer distance runs. Absolutely everything here is geared up to minimize the weight of the actual shoe, to get more of it underfoot, I suppose. You've actually got whole pieces of the upper just simply cut out. They just aren't there. And the toe box is one of the most breathable ever. It'll be interesting to try these out on like a cold December morning or something. You'd need some pretty thick socks, that's all I'm going to say. It is quite a fantastic design, and I haven't felt quite as excited to lace a shoe up since I got hold of a pair of the original Vaporfly Next Percent. And the first runs in this shoe have been really fun. I think with super shoes these days, they're getting them down to the bare bones. You've got the most minimal upper possible, the lightest foam, less rubber underfoot. We've got all of that in the Endorphin Elite. This sort of rear cushion pad here might shock a few people, as will the lack of a traditional heel counter. It certainly appears to be quite the outlandish design when you get it in hand, but when you get it on foot, it all makes sense, really. Just does everything you need it to without any of the bells and whistles. I found getting the tongue to lay flat was quite easy. It's this sort of felt type affair with loads of holes cut in it. It's a little bit like Swiss cheese, I think you'll agree. I didn't notice it sliding around at all on any of my runs so far, and it's just been really comfortable. Toe box is quite a dense mesh here, loads of holes for heat to escape, and that's pretty much a description of the whole shoe. I've tried to kind of figure out something that I dislike about the upper, but I can't really come up with anything at all. Lace length is on point using a runner's knot. The width is reasonable. I wouldn't suggest it's wide or too narrow, and you certainly don't get that awful feeling there in the arch area of the shoe like you get in the Vaporfly or the Alphafly. It's merely like an upper of a running shoe, but the barest essentials that you require. I like my race uppers nice and concise with no extra materials or like overblown designs, and that's exactly what we got here in the Endorphin Elite. I've loved my first 2 runs in it. I'll give it a 3 out of 3 for the upper. Can't remember the last time I did that. I think I gave a 3 out of 3 to the Endorphin Pro 3 as well.
Midsole now.
It does appear that there's gallons of foam underfoot here, but you've got about that same 40mm or so in the sample size. I did find it firm on my first few outings, but it soon starts to crack and pop and really starts to open up a little bit. It's like a new pair of jeans, I suppose. You've got to wear them a few times before they feel part of you. The midsole feel is really smooth. It's like a nice toasted piece of tiger bread with a thin spreading of Marmite on there on a cold morning. There is a noticeable spring on toe off with this one. I find it really easy to go up through the gears to some of my faster paces. In fact, I can lock into half marathon pace and it's almost easy, I suppose, in this shoe. It's a responsive cushion though. Don't expect the same squash that you have in the Endorphin Pro 3. This one wants to go quick, and it tells you about it. Perhaps the foam is a little closer to Flight Foam Turbo that we've seen in the Asics Metaspeed Sky Plus, but I really do like my first runs in this Power Run HG material. You don't have the same compression as with Power Run PB. I mean, that's soft and it's squishy. I mean, that's what people like about the Endorphin Pro 3 and the Speed 3. This feels a little bit more like perhaps the Adios Pro 3 or that Metaspeed Sky Plus. I found the shoe fine to run in at like a slower recovery pace in between some of the faster reps that I did, but it comes alive for me round about that sort of half marathon pace and upwards. As I say, in some windy, gusty weather, no problem hitting some miles at half marathon speed in this one. It's a very lively footbed. It does feel a bit like one of those sort of British sports cars from the 60s. A few people have noted that it's slightly wider in the toe box perhaps in the Endorphin Pro 3, and I think they might be right. In fact, I think there's even a little bit more width here in the outsole, just supplies a little bit more stability maybe. Now, the energy return showed by this foam is quite a different beast to anything I've tried out before. It certainly is suited to higher paced runs. I'd suggest that perhaps if you're looking to do a marathon and finish that marathon, the Pro 3 is a better option. If you can find that pace and just lock into it with this shoe, then it's certainly one of those PB hunting type efforts. I think the Pro 3 is probably a slightly better impact protector. A few viewers have actually noted that on my Strava. They've suggested that they found that the Pro 3 just had a little bit more cushion there, but I think a lot of people will really enjoy the responsive nature that you get in the Endorphin Elite. The Pro 3 perhaps being a little bit less stable, I suppose, in the heel, but you won't spend all that much time on your heels in this one. Now, I think this shoe personally offers a little bit more versatility, like something along the lines of the Vaporfly 3 from Nike. I think you could use that shoe anywhere between like 5k through to the marathon. I think it's pretty much the same use case here if you're going for your, top performance. We do have the issue though of price. It is that bit more expensive, but I'll get to that later. So after my initial runs, and quite a lot of those miles of those initial runs at half marathon speed, I gotta say this is one of the best midsoles I've tried out all year. Superbly smooth, very exciting and exhilarating, and that's what you want from your running shoe, right? More responsive than the Pro 3, and I'd suggest it's probably going to fit a few more runners' feet than the Vaporfly or the Alphafly. For me, absolute dynamite in terms of the midsole, a 3 out of 3 after my initial runs. Outsole now, and it's as grippy as beast's tongue. Very simple in terms of the implementation. It's 2 bits of rubber. I guess it's close in terms of the actual coarse nature of it to the Adios Pro 3 Continental rubber, with a similar sort of rough, coarse texture, but I've noticed it's actually improved after a few runs. Once you scrape it a little bit, it just gets better and better. Holes here cut out for weight relief. Yes, I mean it does expose the midsole a little bit, but this is a race shoe. I'd save it for your sort of premium training runs and your main events. I would suggest that I would avoid using it on any very smooth, wet surfaces. but that's the same as the Adios Pro 3. It's just not really designed for that. This is a road and concrete shoe all the way. Please don't try running in something like this on some like gravel or uneven ground. It's just not designed for that. There's other shoes that are way better for that. Great grip on toe off, and I really enjoyed going around bends in this one. Again, it's just another exciting, exhilarating sort of outsole. Sticks to the surface nicely and provides some really great assured traction on some corners. I mean, you could say they could put a bit more rubber on like the medial side of the heel, maybe stretch it back a little way, put it a little further out to the edge of the shoe, but it's right up there in terms of the grip offered by like the Vaporfly 3 or the Adios Pro 3. Probably most similar actually in terms of the implementation to the Asics Metaspeed Sky Plus. A 2.8 out of 3 for the outsole so far, only lowered a little bit there for my concerns about sort of long-term durability. Though I think it's a road shoe, if you use it in those types of surfaces, then you should be absolutely fine. Value now. Okay, this is an extremely expensive shoe. You cannot escape it. Retail price is right up there. Looking at it out the box, it's a well put together model. I've got no weird sort of glue marks or strange stitching. It does feel like a really nice quality item in hand. On foot, I've already talked about how great it feels to run in. I would suggest out the box, the odor of the shoe is quite pungent. There's that sort of garden centre vibe once again. Yeah, it's really quite strong in this one. I actually had to take it out of the house at one point because it really did start to make the whole room smell. I didn't mind though, because, you know, I like shoes. And I think you do too. This one is going to appeal, I think, to the real enthusiast. If you want the absolute lightest, fastest, most responsive thing going, it's certainly one of the best I've tried out. Does that make it worth the extra cash over the Endorphin Pro 3? I think for many people, perhaps no. I think the only major downfall here is long-term durability. We just don't know how it's going to hold up yet. I mean, the Vaporfly 3 did pretty well over time, like 100 miles, it still felt pretty good. But this one, in terms of the upper, just smashes that into the floor. Perhaps if you guys know how this will hold up over time, it just helps me to try and predict the sort of value that you're going to get from it. More miles, you know, still with the same feel, then great. Some of the people that follow me on Strava have suggested they've got hundreds of miles out of these and they still feel pretty good. If that's the case, then maybe it is worth that extra cost. It is close to the Alphafly price, though I'd suggest it's a very different shoe on foot. It's kind of like comparing apples and oranges, really, that shoe and this one. I'm going to give it a 2.7 for value. I do feel it's exciting and it's very engaging to run in. Though it's still expensive, it can't be denied, and I think many people will probably go for the cheaper, sometimes discounted Endorphin Pro 3. Though I do feel personally this is a better performing shoe for me. If I've totaled the scores up, that gives us 11.5 out of 12 after my initial runs for the Saucony Endorphin Elite. Have you been running in this shoe? Have you raced in it? How are you finding the durability over the long term? Let us know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. Musical interlude time. I've been reliving my sort of youth, I suppose, by listening to some old school rave tracks from Alternate. Absolutely love Evaporate, fantastic tune, really good bass line there, growly synths, and some rolling breakbeats that get introduced after a little while. The beats and the bass are just so rough on the early parts of the tune, it's just fantastic listening. Some real drive and energy to some of that early rave stuff. Just don't get that in some of the highly polished and produced sort of drum and bass you get these days. So many great sections to this track as well. You've got some more techno-like stabs that come in after a while, and some bleepy, squelchy, acid synth noises too. And then there's a very famous sort of sampled string part as well that I believe was from a Chicago house track that was very famous maybe a year or two before. Just so simple, loads of really great component parts kind of stitched together into a rave patchwork quilt. Alternate just masters of crocheting it all together. Go and check it out. Evaporate by Alternate. Thanks for tuning in, people. Hope you enjoyed my review of the Endorphin Elite as much as I did running in the shoe. Hit that subscribe button and also hit the bell for notifications too. Give this video a thumbs up like and share it with your running buddies. My name's Eddbud and I'll be seeing you. Also, give me a shout if you're running at the half marathon in Manchester in October. I'll be there. Come and meet up with me and have a 0% Guinness.